Okay, hey y'all. Hope everyone's doing well out there. I think this is my fourth video on YouTube. Yay! And this is kind of like part two of a continuation of the third one. I think I got to a point to where I was rambling a little bit, so I'm going to try to pick up where I left off. I might skip around a little bit, but hey, that's the way it is. Okay. I think I was talking about being on hormones for a couple of years and how they changed some of the perspectives and stuff, the way I felt and thought about things and that kind of stuff. Um, my body didn't adjust well to oral estradiol, but once I started injectables, OMG, that was like a game changer for me. Um, Everything that I wanted to attain, I attained very quickly on injectables. My body absorbed them uh, readily and rapidly, um, and my mind changed. And all of a sudden, all this incongruency that I had felt in my life started to come together. I started to look on the outside the way I felt on the inside. Um, the the way my fat metabolized and was redistributed. I'm sorry, in my body. Um, my breast growth, the way my face changed shape a little bit, and the loss of muscle mass. I didn't so much look like that guy that I detested, all those years. I started to look like me, like I wanted to look. I saw positive change, in the mirror. Um, and that was really good. And again, the peace was just like this blanket that enveloped me in my mindset. Everything was great. I came out to a couple of my family members. I'll touch more on that in another video. But went well. Um, at least one of them, and you know who you are. One of my biggest, no, I take that back. My biggest supporter of my family. Um, and yeah, Dad, I'm talking about you. I love you. Thank you for that. Um, Anyway, so I'm sorry, getting a little emotional, but moving on. Once those changes started taking place, I had not transitioned socially. It was just a medical transition, and also had legally not transitioned. So sometimes people do things a little bit different. Sometimes they throw it all out there at one time. I know for me, it was a gradual thing, and my transition took a long time. My transition from when I started hormones to when I finally changed my name legally and came out at work, it was 4 years. That's a long time. It's a really long time. But what happened was is what had happened was like socially, um, I started to have to adapt to those changes because I was looking different. Breast growth. I was not really totally out on social media at that point. I did have friends, but they were in other towns, so no one really locally knew. But my wife would post pictures of us together sometimes on her Facebook stuff, and people, you know, were thinking, hey, what's going on with this? At the time, he, was looking different or whatever. Um, and I only found that out later after I came out, and I started talking to these friends who were supporters of mine, that I could have come out to you know, a long time before that. But I mean, hell, I didn't know. That's just the way it was. Um, anyway, so those injectables took effect. It got to a point to where I guess this big thing for me was, on the weekends, I had to dress the way that made me feel good. Um, my clothing was different. I still kind of kept like gender neutral t-shirts and that kind of stuff a little bit. But as it progressed, it got to be where those were more feminine, tighter fitting. Shorts were female. Um, So there was no looking back. Um, got to be, I guess, the summer of 2021. I had come out to my kids, prior to that, maybe a couple of years before that. They were okay with what's going on, with stuff. Again, we got four amazing, very understanding, accepting children, and they were fine with all that. So there wasn't an issue there. My wife's family, I think, knew a little bit of kind of what was going on, but I didn't see them enough at the time to have to really explain much to them. Anyway, summer 2021. This is kind of like how things came to an end for me. And I'm so thankful they did. It was more and more and more me talking to Kelly about these things, about, hey, I know at some point I'm going to have to transition. And she's like, yeah, I know that. And neither one of us discussed it much past that. Um, I had been in therapy since 2016. So I was in therapy for 5 years, almost a full 5 years, before I actually came out, um, socially, legally at work and, that kind of stuff. So anyway, I'm sorry, I'm rambling again. But back to the summer of 2021, we had decided to sell our home. The market was really good, and we didn't need the acreage that we had anymore. And we wanted to be in a bigger town that was, 20 miles, away. That we spent a lot of time in on the weekend shopping and that stuff. So it was an opportunity to sell our house. Did that. We are gonna go just rent a house and this kind of stuff. And our in-laws had moved from a few hours away. They were buying a home too in the same general area. So they're like, hey, why don't you guys come move in with us? There's kind of like an in-law suite, and at that time we had two children at home. They were going to move with us, and we're going to stay there for a little while. We're like, okay, sure, sounds great. So we sold our house, put some bunch of stuff in storage, moved in with them. Everything was great. Went down to Cancun um, for a week and had a blast. I was able to be me. I had to wear my swim attire was different. I didn't have boy trunks anymore, and I had to have a top. I've had visible, protruding breasts by this point, and there's no hiding this. I had to wear a top of that, and you know, Kelly and I both entered, even though legally my name wasn't Lexi then. I mean, that was a name I'd chosen years ago. I was introduced as Lexi and accepted by some very accepting people, some tremendous people that we met down there in Cancun. I think we got there on Saturday. After about 3 days in, I woke up one morning and I felt horrible. Um, at first, I really thought I was really hungover, but come to find out, I had contracted COVID. Anyway, I spent that all that day in the bed. But the one thing that came out of that morning was Kelly was in another part of the resort, and I was sitting outside, watching people go by and that kind of stuff, and wound up, drinking my coffee. And I'm texting her. I'm like, I just don't know how, after being here for a few days and being accepted for who I am, and everything's going swimmingly well, how am I going to go back to a male life at work, and socially when we get back to the States, when we get back to Georgia? And she's like, well, I thought, she kind of responded like, well, I thought it'd be just the opposite, that all of the affirmation that you've gotten down here would make you feel great. She was right. I mean, it did make me feel great. But what I was dreading was going back and having to not feel great again. I'd had years of that. So we finished out the week, got back, was sick with COVID. Had to stay out of work for 10 days or so. Got back to work, and I told Kelly, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to call HR. And, again, I worked for a very liberal corporation, telecom corporation, for 23 years now. At the time, 21. And I said, I'm just, they support this. We've got a transgender policy in place. There's supposed to be, I'm supposed to be able to come out at work and get my name changed and be totally accepted by my peers, no problem there. So I call HR and they're like, well, when do you want to do this? And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I was just kind of finding out like what was the process. And uh, I'm like, maybe 6 months, maybe 8 months. I know I'm kind of calling early, but I just had some questions about it. So I asked my questions. The best phone call I ever made. Uh, they were super supportive, told me, hey, you do what you got to do. Don't worry about anything. We're here for you. And I was like, okay, cool. So a few days later, it wouldn't leave my mind. So I called the guy I worked for, my manager. He was coming up to see me for us to have a meeting. We usually meet once a month or whatever. Um, and I said, look, I need to talk to you. When you get up here. And sure, yeah, no problem. So we're kind of finishing up. He's like, what's on your mind? And I just blurted it out. I came out and told him. And the response I got was, I love you. I accept you. I'm here for you, and this company is here for you. Um, Within a week, uh, we had our district manager from another state. He wanted to sit down and meet with me. So him and my manager both come down. We all sit down, all three of us. We talk. Um, he asked what could they do to be there for me. He said they've got this. They're going to handle it. They're going to talk to everyone for me. If I want to be involved with that, great. If I don't, not a problem. But there was going to be no issue with this with my peers whatsoever. They were right. Absolutely right. Next thing I know, in some of our systems, we started changing my name. I went to an attorney, found a great attorney right around the corner. Excuse me.